Well, yesterday we covered more ground than we might have anticipated. We looked at the movement from Genesis 1:1 and the absolute beginning into a consideration of the Spirit. The Spirit who, at the instant of creation, at the time point of creating the highest heavens, the Spirit enters into that realm and fills that realm with glory, just as the Spirit filled the tabernacle with glory, just as the Spirit hovered over the people of God, bringing them out of Israel and protecting them and showing them His glory. The alpha point of such glory, the starting point of such glory, is the absolute beginning, the creation of the highest heavens. And we looked at the way that the Spirit, the hovering Spirit, begins the process of reproducing the glory of God in heaven on earth. So this lecture now, we will look now at Genesis 1:2. I'm going to master this soon. Genesis 1:2. And the work of the Spirit, as now the Spirit hovers over the created realm, hovers over the primal waters of the tohu vavohu. And here's the thesis. This is going to guide us through this entire lecture. Here's the thesis, that the hovering of the Spirit over the formless void in Genesis 1:2 brings into view, especially on days 2 and 3, the creation of the visible heavens and the visible earth together as a replica of that glory in the highest heavens. Now, this changes the way we think about creation. Days 1 through 6, and especially as we're going to look at days 2 and 3, the creation of the visible heavens and earth, you need to think of that not simply as creation, but as a replication of what God created in the absolute beginning in heaven. And so as we look at this, we will note and try to come to terms with the fact that the entire work of creation, days 1 through 6, is a sustained replication of the glory of God's presence in the highest heavens in earthly, visible forms. The created, visible heavens, the created, visible earth. And so, illustrating this point, note this well in verse 8. I want us to talk about verse 8 and think now, as the Spirit hovers, we're going to think about the creation of the visible heavens. And I want you to note the relationship between the visible heavens and the highest heaven. On day 2, as you look at Genesis 1, 6 through 8, God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse, and it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day." Now, I noted this earlier, but remember this. There is a reference here to the waters above the expanse, which is the sky, and the waters that are below the expanse on earth. You find a reference here to the waters above, which are most likely clouds, and the waters below are most likely oceans and seas and rivers. Now, what we need to appreciate here is this, and I want you to reflect on this with me. having already used the Hebrew word hashamayim, the creation of the highest heaven, now in Genesis 1, 6 through 8, that same language is used to describe visible heavens. Now this is intentional, and I want you to think of this and work through this with me. Why use that terminology again on day 2? Why speak of the heavens and the earth in the absolute beginning, where the heavens denote that upper register, highest heaven, temple realm where God dwells in the glory of the Spirit? Why use the language heaven to describe what we see? It's obvious that the visible heavens are construed as a replica of the glory of the highest heavens. That the visible heavens reflect and reveal the glory of the highest heavens in this mode of visible, tangible access. The let there be is a spirated, breathed out word from the Spirit. The Spirit who hovered over the primal waters of the formless void is now bringing into existence an expanse. And you can think of the expanse as a dome-like feature. If you look at the visible heavens, what does it look like standing on the earth? It looks like a glorious dome, doesn't it? It looks like an expanse, and you can see the glory of the sun, the glory of the moon, the glory of the stars. And what do those things point toward? What do those things turn your mind to and turn your heart to? Well, the visible heavens turn your mind to those highest invisible heavens where the Spirit's glory is dwelling. The Spirit, as the Spirit hovers over those primal waters, and as the Spirit brings into view, especially in verse 8 on the second day, these visible heavens, it's a movement toward reproducing in visible space what is present in those invisible highest heavens. The Spirit speaks, let there be an expanse called heaven, and it was so. So, both are alike heaven, but the first is that permanent, abiding place where God dwells. But the earth, remember what we said from Psalm 90, Psalm 102, and other texts? What is this visible heavens doing? It's replicating the glory of heaven in an impermanent form. The highest heavens, the permanent dwelling place of God, the visible heavens, a temporary visible replica of the glory in those highest heavens where the Spirit of God is indoxate. As you move forward to day 3, look at Genesis 1, 9 through 13. And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, fruit trees bearing fruit, in which their seed according to their kind on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. On day 3, now, in addition to the visible heavens, you have earth. And that's one, roughly from 9 to 13 here. What are you starting to see? There's a distinction now between the visible heavens and the earth, and both of these together, taken together, are a visible replica and a presentation of that glory that we saw from the upper register, from that heavenly temple realm. The visible earth is formed now to accompany the visible heavens, as both taken together replicate in visible forms the glory of the highest, presently veiled invisible heavens. A quote from Meredith Kline I find useful in God, Heaven, and Harmageddon on page 33. Listen to this. Days 2 and 3 are a striking, extended pattern of reproduction of the archetypal upper level in lower level forms. Now, what does that do? Think about this. As you think about creation, it's not only that God, by the power and creative breath of the Spirit, is causing things that are not to be, speaking into existence by sovereign power, visible heavens and visible earth. It's more than that. Those visible heavens and earth on days 2 and 3 are a replica of the glory of God in heaven, so that everything in creation, everything God makes that is visible, is designed to move those who see it to ponder things above. Let me put it this way. When you see the visible heavens and earth according to Genesis 1, your mind is to move above those things to contemplate those two primary foundations we thought about yesterday, which are what? The glory of God that is permanently joined to heaven above. Now, once we see this and we think in this way, we can now start to make sense of the way God is working in days 1 through 6. And I'm going to erase this very quickly and put something up on the board that I hope will prove useful. But I want to give you something that will be a kind of guide for our understanding of the days of creation. To put this now in a broader frame of reference, I want you to think of days 1, 2, and 3, days 4, 5, and 6, as two panels that are going to replicate now that glory in the highest heavens. And this isn't to give you a certain day of creation, a certain view of the days of creation, but on days 1 through 3, I want you to think of creature kingdoms. And I'll move the 1 there, I'll move the 2 there, I'll move the 3 there. And then creature kings, days 4, 5, and 6. And as you think about this, on day 4, God creates the sun and the moon to rule over day and night on day 1. On days 1, 2, and 3, there is a replication of the glory of heaven in terms of creature kingdoms or realms. There is light and darkness. There is here on day 2 going to be the visible heavens. On day 3, the visible earth. And so days 4, 5, and 6, creature kings rule over each. The sun and the moon rule over the day and night. The birds fill the air. And on day 6, when God makes man, Adam and Eve, they are not only to rule, they are to multiply. Now, the point when we're thinking about this is simply this. In the highest heavens, the Spirit dwells in the glory realm of that temple dwelling. And in days 1 through 3, creature kingdoms or realms are made. Days 4 through 6, creature kings rule over. And everything's going to start to focus as we move forward on man, male and female, created as the image of God. For our limited purposes here, Think of it this way. Just as God made heaven as a glory temple where he expresses that sovereign creative power for all to see and worship, so the creation of the visible heavens and earth has realms and rulers that are replicas, earthly replicas of the glory of God in heaven. And so the visible heavens and earth are a replica of that highest heavens. And so there's an insight here to grasp, and we need to understand this. The visible heavens and earth, these creature kingdoms and these creature kings, they bring to expression in time something that both reveals yet veils the glory of the highest heavens. They reveal the glory of the highest heavens, as we've seen on days 2 and 3, in that you have a visible replica of the heavens, but they also veil that glory. That glory is not given its full expression on earth. It finds its concentrated fullness in the highest heavens. So the hovering of the Spirit over the primal waters, over the formless void, bringing order in kingdoms and kings, but with a special focus now on days 2 and 3, the visible heavens and earth, you find creation to be not merely an expression of the glory of God, but an expression of that glory reserved in heaven for creatures who will be made to worship God. Now, in that realm, this created, visible, heavenly realm, the movement from days 4 through 6 is going to climax in Sabbath rest. What we'll do when we talk about Sabbath rest later is bring out this point, that when God enters into that heavenly resting realm, he does so with a view toward all that he has made, reflecting the glory of God as it is situated in that heavenly tabernacle. Adam, when he is made, Eve, when she is made, are going to be made in the image of God. But what we're going to do in the next lesson as we move forward is think about this, that we really haven't gotten to the specific, concentrated, focused replica of the glory of God. And I'm going to preview what we're about to do very briefly here. The visible heavens and earth are this grand display of the glory of God in heaven. When you get into the topography of Eden, and you look at Eden as the garden of God, and you reflect on the mountain of God in Eden, here's what we're going to see. We're going to see Eden as a lush, fertile environment where the waters flow and give life to all of the verdure surrounding Eden. And in the midst of Eden, we're going to look at a mountain. The mountain of God in the garden of God is the place where that macro imaging of heaven in the visible heavens and earth, listen, it finds a concentrated, focused expression in a garden environment with a mountain in its center. For what purpose? I'll tell you. The mountain of God in Eden is the intensive replica of the glory of God in heaven, and it forms the place of worship in Eden as preparation for image bearers who are going to be created from the dust of the ground, brought into Eden, placed upon a mountain to have fellowship with God. And that fellowship on earth, in Eden, on the mountain of God, is in Genesis 2 to show us that the worship and the praise of God in Eden on that mountain is itself the replica, the earthly expression of what awaits image bearers when obedience to a covenant reaches its fruition. There will be a translation from the earthly mountain in Eden to heavenly Sabbath rest. And so as we think about Genesis 1 and 2, these 2 points stand out for these purposes. A, the visible heavens and earth replicate that glory in heaven. But B, and more intensively, what we'll look at in our next lesson, it is in Eden and on the mountain of God, listen, that the glory presence of the Spirit from heaven will descend, light that mountain ablaze with glory, and God will walk with Adam and fellowship with Adam, and Adam will know God in the fellowship of that sacred bond. As an image bearer and under covenant, he will know God, and the mountain in Eden will become the focal point of that fellowship bond between God and Adam. And the mountain itself will do this. It will lift Adam up on earth and focus him on the glory of God in heaven that awaits him when his time on earth in Eden, under probation, in covenant fellowship with God, comes to its fruition. And so our next lesson will focus on Eden, the garden and the mountain, as the special dwelling place of God where he approaches his people. He provides a realm where he will approach his people in a bond of religious fellowship that is ordered toward the heavenly temple dwelling itself. And we'll cover that in our next lesson. Thank you.